I have a tendency to walk around. So good afternoon. Thank you for being here. You heard David say this earlier, but Chicago is the highest participating market that we've done in 40-plus cities across the United States. So you guys do deserve a round of applause. Don't applaud. Oh, I caught you. Because we're short on time, so I'm going to jump right into it. But I am very fond of Chicago, one of my favorite cities. My wife grew up in Naperville, Schaumburg area. I still remember a quick story. When I was a kid, I grew up in Marion, Indiana, a factory worker family, and my parents decided to take my brother and I on a quick little trip up to Chicago, big city Chicago, and 30,000 people in my little city, and we're going to big Chicago. So we jump on Amtrak, take the train all the way up to Chicago. We get off the train, and my parents have us down for breakfast, and they say, "Guess where we're going?" And my brother and I must have been 5 or 6 years old, and we're like, "We don't know." And they said, "We're going to the Bozo Show." So sorry if that dates me at all, but man, we were so excited. So I'm very, very fond of Chicago. So just a bit of housekeeping real quick. I'm going to go through a bunch of stats and numbers, so I'm the boring numbers guy. But if you have questions at the very end, we'll open it up to Q&A. You'll see two folks on each side. They'll have microphones. Just if you do have a question, raise your hand. Wait till they get to you so that you can answer or ask that question via the mic so the rest of the audience can hear. So if you have a question during this process, write it down. I believe you have pens and papers there with you. So when I was preparing for this presentation, I know I speak at a lot of these events, and typically it's for a very short amount of time just to talk about comparison. But I wanted to look at where do we stand, not just in the United States, but globally. So World Health Organization came out with a study last year that shows obesity, and obesity looking at BMI numbers of greater than 30. And you can see United States, no surprise there, we're out there. But there are other countries that are facing this obesity epidemic. It's not just a United States issue. When you look at the next chart, this graph is by the Organization on Economic Cooperation and Development. And you can see we've been studying, the United States, that being, has been studying obesity and the whole epidemic issue for quite some time, and rightfully so, because we've had an issue. But you can see other countries have been looking at this as an issue too. Unfortunately, the United States hasn't started to bend that trend, and we are still leading the world when it comes to obesity. Now close to 33%. American Diabetes says that 1 in 3 Americans are obese, so it's a real issue. And as employers, you're feeling it. So this chart, if you've been around the wellness space, no big surprise here, you've seen this. 1985 was not that long ago. I can still remember seeing Back to the Future. My wife loves 80s music. So it's 1985 is not that long ago. But the thing that I point out on this chart is that you don't see a single state over 15% obesity, right? Now fast forward to the updated charts just issued August of this year. Now there's not a single state under 15% obesity. So from 1985 to 2011, that's not a long time span. And we have dramatically increased in obese people in America. As employers, you're seeing this. Heavy workers cost more money. This chart specifically measures body mass index as associated, or the attributable cost associated with workers' comp claims. But we know that those claims trickle down into medical claims, absenteeism, presenteeism, which is a new buzzword out there. Presenteeism, some estimates say $250 billion are lost in presenteeism. The idea of coming to work sick or coming to work because you have other things on your mind. So it's a real issue. 1903, this is a fun little thing. Has anybody seen this before? 1903, Big Joe was billed as the largest man alive. And people would actually pay money to go see this guy. Yeah, I know, 1903. Now fast forward 2012, and you go out here on the subway or to Walmart, and you're likely to see folks like this. We have become so accustomed to it, and it's around us, that it's not even a big issue anymore. As employers, and obviously with healthcare reform addressing some of these issues, we're starting to see ultimately that cost being attributed down to the employee level and in our health insurance premiums. So A quick look at one of the main drivers, obesity. We get asked all the time, Rod, if we've got to focus on one or two things, what do you focus on? I say start with tobacco and obesity. From obesity, there's so many other costs that are associated with healthcare. So new door, let's a little opportunity. So new door, the idea here is that wellness is a new opportunity for you as employers. You in this room represent a lot of the leaders. You're already doing wellness, but a little contest here to lighten it up here. Take the 7 letters from new door. If you've got a pen and paper there, scramble them up and write one word. And as soon as you have the answer, yell it out. Or anybody get this? Oh, I heard somebody say it. Oh, well, my wife didn't. My wife said that somebody would get it. I didn't think they would. This is from the Disney Institute. We were down there a couple weeks ago. The answer is one word. New door, I said scramble the letters up and write one word. Yes. But see, you in this room, corporate wellness is not that difficult, right? I mean, the Richard Simmons of the world have been around for a long, long time. We know what the right thing is to do are. If you went out here on the street and asked somebody that's completely outside of our industry, what do I need to do to be healthy? They're going to tell you, I need to eat right and exercise, right? But we have this tendency of making things so much more complicated and making this industry much more complicated, and we don't need to do that. So David talked about the methodology, so I won't get into that, but I do want to go through some of the comparisons. And these are, recognize the collars at all? That's Bears collars. Your Bears are doing much better than my Indianapolis Colts. So when we look at the stats, the Age of Wellness program, we find a lot of things very encouraging here. When you look at the specifics, on the far right, the Age of Wellness of 10 years plus, no big surprise here. Your employers that have been the larger employers have been innovative. They've created great opportunities, and many of those folks are here in this room today. You've been the trailblazers. You've set the trend. You've given us that data that's now available for these smaller employers. The encouraging thing on this slide is that a lot of the programs are relatively new. So within that 3 to 4 years, under 4 years, still half of the programs that are here nationally and locally are still relatively new. And then when you look at the size of employers, these are the 5 sizes that we track. We separate them underneath these 5 categories because we believe that once you reach 100 employees and then that 100 to 499, we can see a marked difference in the product or the service that's being delivered in that wellness program. So that's why we segment them among these sizes. But the key thing here is that half of the employers are under 500. This chart, these numbers have grown. We started this analysis in 2009, and we're dramatically seeing those numbers increase down to the small employer, and obviously Humana Vitality being one of those players in this space. So very encouraging to see the smaller employers getting involved. So how do you really compare? 2 things on this graph. The Healthiest Employer Index, that is the score. For you employers that have gone through this process, you're given an index or score. That's on a range of 0 to 100, with our national average being at 54.85. And that fluctuates literally on a daily basis. You heard mentioned we do this in 43 markets. We have companies applying daily, so that fluctuates, but it's been around that 54 to 54 range. Illinois is at 52.34, a great showing for the first year, very good, no big thing to talk about there. But the 6 categories were mentioned. I only mentioned the one, culture and leadership commitment, and talk about something that we really mean there. In the wellness world, if you read any articles on wellness, the 2 big buzzwords are leadership and engagement. Hear those all the time. When we think of leadership, and the reason we've combined culture and leadership is that leadership is not just that CEO deciding that I'm going to bike to work or I'm going to exercise and be a good physical example, but it's leadership being passed down to that middle level manager, the divisional level managers, and so on, so that you have adoption throughout your company, thus changing the culture. So it's not just the one person, but it trickles down and all need to be affected. And on the next one, a couple things here. Number one, the tobacco-free workplace. And I normally start this by saying we surveyed over 4,000 companies this year, representative almost 50 million employees. So this is a pretty good set of information, a big N statistically, but the thing to remember is these are companies that have applied, like you, to be recognized as a healthiest employer, yet 78%. That's a good, right? 78%, but where's the remaining? We need to see that tobacco-free workplace at 100%. And I realize that with union workforces, it's not always as easy to just do that, but that's our side of it. We're preaching wellness, so we'd love to see that number up. But number 3 and 4 are pretty key, and this is something that we've been measuring. Health risk assessments used to be called the staple of corporate wellness. If you're going to start a wellness program, start there. Biometric screening has become, and is, in our opinion, becoming one of the staples, if not the staple. And we're starting to see, as we talk to large employers with 50,000 employees and above, that they're actually moving that HRA to every other year or every third year. So if I'm back next year, if we talk next year, if you see these numbers, I wouldn't be surprised to see those numbers inversed and see biometric screening actually above health risk assessments. And from a statistical perspective, that's good because we like to measure objective data, not subjective data. And I won't have a raise of hands. And since you're having fruit today, you can all say you've had your fruits and vegetables today. But we like to say if you're going to ask a question, make sure that the information is actionable. So as an employer, if you're asking questions like how many fruits and vegetables are you using, understand that you need to be able to use that information in some fashion. Oh, I jumped the slide. All right, so now we're going to do some Q&A. So if you have any questions, where's our microphones and runners? Okay, we've got over here in the pink and in the back. And I'll start it out by asking one of the questions. This comes from Lynn Christian from Riverside Medical Center. She asked, how important is wellness software to a wellness program? And my answer to that question would be, I think it's very important. If you're using a health risk assessment, if you're doing biometric screening, if you want analytics, a health risk or a software of some sort is very important. The level and the complexity depends on your individual situation. So any questions? Raise your hand if you have a question. This will be a quick Q&A time if you guys don't have any questions. Anybody? Well, I'll ask another one real quick that was given to us. Jill Finnegan from Reby Storage and Moving said, what is the best way to begin a wellness program for your company? And that's a common question we get all the time. And I'm going to point you to something that we created. It's back on our back table. It's free. But we talk with thousands of employers. And so we created a 5-step process in either developing or moving your program to that recognition level to be a healthiest employer, something that you can pick up there. Anybody have any questions? There we go. Okay.
There you go. Save your voice. So, just briefly, if you can describe what is the biometric screening and what are the typical metrics that you look for in that for companies to assess themselves?
Sure. Biometric screening could be as simple as a finger stick or a lipid panel. It might be something more invasive, like a venipuncture. But the idea is getting blood measurement. So you're looking for triglycerides, HDL, LDL. Is that good? Yes? So the question was, how does financial wellness play a role? We do ask a couple questions regarding financial wellness, but it's more subjective. So it is part of our questionnaire set, but not a big piece. Good. Yes?
As we move towards the implementation of Obamacare going forward here, how does wellness play into that at this point?
So you win the prize. I was wondering who was going to ask the question. So there's a couple things, right? I mean, when you think about the adoption of healthcare reform, how employers are going to react, and without getting on a soapbox, here's my opinion. Wellness as a whole traditionally centered around claims reduction. That trend, and I will be the poster child if I need to be, we believe that trend is moving much more towards productivity. I'm not the first person to say that. That's been around for quite some time, but we believe that no matter where healthcare ends up, the delivery of health insurance, that you're going to see a value on the employer level to delivering a healthier, broader well-being of an employee. Because it's logical. A healthier employee misses less days, they're more productive. It's just a good thing to do. Yes, sir?
How do you measure presenteeism?
Subjective. Presenteeism, the idea of presenteeism is showing up to work and not being productive as normal. A normal employee, studies show that a normal employee is productive at 80%. No one's 100% productive. So 80% level. So anything that reduces that 80% is attributed to presenteeism.
How could you show that your program lessens presenteeism?
You'd have to ask the employees and track them.
Has anybody done that?
We know a few employers that are tracking presenteeism, yes. It's not broadly adopted at this point. But being in the data business, we of course love for those employers to track it. So, good. Any other questions? Thoughts? How are we okay? Yes, sir.
Can you comment on...
There's a microphone. There we go.
Can you comment on privacy with the increased aggregation of data on the employee?
Privacy is obviously an issue with HIPAA. So again, going back to the software question, that's one advantage of using an outside vendor for software. They help you de-identify or blind the data back to an employer so they can give you information without being, without crossing that boundary of privacy. Good. Yes, ma'am. So the engagement question, how do you increase participation? There's no silver bullet. Certainly we all are motivated by money, so that is what most employers do, is they try to throw money at everything. I start with asking, whenever we talk with individual employers, find out what your employees want. If you have a blue-collar workforce, they're going to desire something different than a white-collar workforce. So understanding your population is the first place to start. You can ask them, survey them, find out what they want before you just assume that what you want is what they want. Anybody else? Good questions. All right. All right, if there's no more questions. I'll mention some ideas, and this is on that chart too, but we hear really fun things out there in the space, like painted stairwells. We heard of this one company that was doing, gave their employees pedometers, accelerometers, and they wanted to track movement, and so they did a stair contest. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. But their employees were saying, the stairs are dark, dreary places. I don't want to hang out in the stairs, right? So they brought their children in, of the employees, and they painted the stairwells, made them more lively. Organic gardens. We know of a company in Indianapolis that has a large atrium, and in the center of their building, they actually have an organic garden that they can grow 24/7, all year round, and they can take those fruits and vegetables and give them out to the employees, so an organic garden. So there's a lot of really creative things. I don't want to get into those because hopefully we're going to mention some of those ideas today. But I always like to end with a challenge. This last May 27th to June 27th, I had the privilege of spending a month in Africa. And here's a picture in South Sudan. I was about 16 miles from Kajo-Keji, South Sudan. South Sudan just claimed their independence last year. We were one of the first legally allowed Americans into the country. And we were surveying the country to look for how can we help? As Healthiest employers, how can we as an organization help out? Is it humanitarian? Is it food, shelter, clean water, drilling wells? And what I took back, I was there a month. And you go anywhere outside the United States for that length of time, and it changes your view on the world. Came back into the United States, and I had 5 of my buddies that were with me, and one of my friends elbows me and he says, "Rod, do you notice how fat people are here in America?" And it was like, wow, you don't really notice it because we're around it all the time, right? But you go overseas and it's amazing. We talk about this issue of obesity as like it's a statistic or something, but it's not. I mean, it really goes down to the individual. And what an opportunity we have The mind trust here in this room of great employers, of leaders, to be able to affect positive change, not just worldwide, but within your own population, to have an effect on the people that you work with each and every day. Studies show that you'll spend more time with the people you work with in your own family. You better like them. So, and I'll end with this. Confucius once said, "What I hear I forget, what I see I remember, and what I do I understand." We've heard what we need to do. We've seen what we can do. Now it's our time as leaders in this room to do it. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Congratulations to all of you. Keep up the good work and be well.